Yeah. Part of the success of that record, I mean, once the songs were done, we did all our own harmony singing. So it was always Eno, Edge, and myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we didn't want to bring in any outside singers. You know, there might have been better singers down the road, let's say, but we wanted to keep it in-house because there's some. I think people really feel that in-house feeling. You know, when you don't go outside of the immediate talent of the band, and we were honorary members of the band at that point, and so we did all our own background singing, and I think the soul of that record is partly due to that. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for. You know, the harmonies.
Yeah,
and Eno's a great singer, by the way. Eno's a great singer.
Yeah, and there you go. There's that gospel layering.
Yeah, there it is. I think that song, I might have whispered something in Bono's ear about a direction. You know, it might have been a little more soul music driven. It was a territory that he had not visited before because they had come up as a punk band. So, you know, they wouldn't have wanted to sound like, you know, the soul records that I grew up with because, you know, Hamilton's near Buffalo and Detroit. So I heard all the Motown stuff coming up as a kid. So that was obviously part of my upbringing and part of my musical fiber. And so I think I whispered something in his ear, and it was probably just something that was derived from the soul music time.
I do want to ask you a quick question about the Robbie Robertson record. Is that did he sort of integrated? If I remember that record a bit, and also, you know, I remember, you know, I had a long conversation with Robbie. That was there a conscious effort to integrate some of his native heritage into the texture of that recording?
We never talked about his native background as a tonality that should be on the record. We just got on with it. Robbie had a whole batch of songs ready to roll when I met him, and we recorded some of those. But new songs came along, and I think that's where, because I was very looking forward to working with him because he was you know, a generation ahead of me and a hero of mine because we grew up in the same neck of the woods. Yeah. He was a trailblazer and went south and discovered a lot about American music. And so I really wanted to be in the arena with him. But I think he appreciated that he was working with a Canadian. Yeah. And I brought a Canadian fellow along with me named Bill Dillon, who's a great guitar player from Hamilton. And so we had a little bit of, even though he was not working with his mates from the band at that point, we had a little mini band because he had me and he had Bill Dillon. So we were the three Canadians were there in the trenches together. It was very nice. Yeah. And I think I was able to get to certain places emotionally with Robbie that I'm not suggesting that he had forgotten about that, but he was living in Los Angeles and us, we were just coming fresh from Canada. So we had that naive searching spirit. And so I think I woke up that part of Robbie again, and then we were able to get on with some other songs, you know, that Fallen Angel, for example, his mate had just passed. And
which
so
one?
I think it was Richard Manuel had passed, and so that's what Fallen Angel was about, and we're able to really align emotionally. And so I think it's not specifically native, the tones that we bumped into, but I think they're very quite regional and quite concentrated in the area where we came from. So I think that was an interesting emotional contribution to Robbie's work at that time.
Yeah, I remember listening to it a lot at the time. Now let's talk about Dylan a bit, because I recently listened to Oh Mercy a couple of times. Not the first time I didn't realize it was you, and then I realized, I was like, oh, this is the beginning of this thing with this guy. So on Oh Mercy, what was the understanding between you and Bob in terms of how he wanted that record to be?
He had stopped into the studio when I was making Neville Brothers record. He was touring in New Orleans, and he stopped in, and we played him few tracks from that, and he was impressed with the setting because we had built a custom studio for the Nevilles around the corner from.
What did you do differently with the Nevilles that they had not really done? Because I don't know that record.
Well, we just I decided to just have the studio around right at the end of the street from where they lived, and
okay.
I just built the studio for them. It was not a commercial studio, and I think they appreciated that it was. It was all kind of happening live in one room. We didn't have isolation and all that. And I think we got to a very soulful place quite quickly with the Nevilles. And we had cut a couple of Bob's songs. We had cut God on Our Side. And I played him our version of God on Our Side with Aaron Neville singing. Very beautiful rendition, very powerful emotionally. And at the end of it, Bob said, "That sounds like a record." It was a big compliment from Bob.
Yeah.
And played him a couple of other things, and he said, "Well, how should we work, Daniel?" I said, "Well, we could do it in New Orleans." I said, "When are you available?" He says, "Well, I'm available in the spring," which is 3 months away. I said, "Well, come down. You don't have to bring a band or anything. Just show up with your songs. You don't even need any instruments. I'll have the whole thing set up. At this point, I rented a new house specifically for the Bob record
in New Orleans.
In New Orleans, and it was a very private setting. We set up in a kitchen, really, and I sat next to Bob, and we played our guitars, and I had just a Roland 808, which is a beatbox, like a little hip hop beatbox.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a band in the room. We'd cut everything to the Roland 808. I just fed that through a wedge in front of him, so had a little bit of a singing on stage feeling. But it was very private, and I was determined to get the center of the record in a very strong position before having other people on it. I wanted the words, Bob's vocal, and the songs to be powerful and clear. And so we concentrated on the Roland 808, Bob's playing and singing, and my playing along with him. So that's most of the record, just the two of us, and then we added stuff on top.
Really? So that's an intimate experience.
Very much so. I had visited Bob at his place prior to all this to listen to some of the songs, and he already had a song called Most of the Time.
That song kills me. That's the fucking song on that record, buddy.
Yeah, man, it kills me too when I hear it. And it's interesting because getting back to textural work now, I overdubbed a quartet on that, what would normally be a string quartet. I did it with 4 Les Pauls. 4 Les Paul single note performances that I played my Vox amp up to 10. And so most of the ding, clear focus, boom, most of the boom, almost playing, taking the role of a cello, let's say. Then the next one, I'll play the role of the viola. Next one, I'll be the violin, and then maybe the contrabass. And so what you hear in the background as a texture is 4 Les Paul parts. And it sounds like a string quartet, but it's not, obviously. But we had the advantage of fixed time because we cut it to the Roland 808. So most of the almost an early hip hop beat, really. And then we had Willie Green, who played drums with the Neville brothers. He lived around the corner, so he came over and overdubbed the drums. Most of the got one of the world's greatest funk drummers now playing on Most of the Time. But because I had fixed time, I was able to apply an echo. So if you hear the drums, they sound really haunting and deep, but kind of hip-hop.
Interesting.
On a song that's not meant to be hip-hop at all.
It's a real heartbreaker.
And I overdubbed the bass after.
Wow, the Les Paul trip and that's an amazing story. Different guitars or one Les Paul overdubbed.
Same Les Paul. I think I got it here somewhere.
So it seems to me that the other record, the Time Out of Mind record, when I heard that was I think the first time I really acknowledged or knew about you, and that you had brought the sound to this thing. And when that record came out, I thought like, well, the reason this is amazing is this guy Lanois has figured out that this is the beginning of the tunnel for Bob. that he's moving towards the light, man.
Well, at that time, I had rented an old Mexican theater in Cinema House in Oxnard, California, which is an hour north of L.A. And so that's where my shop was. And Bob came down there to do some demos.
Uh-huh.
And that was the beginning of the Time Out of Mind sound. But I had met Bob in New York prior to that.
But prior to Oh Mercy, you mean? Or
no,
in between. Oh,
yeah, but prior to him coming to it was called the Teatro, the place in Oxnard.
And that's where Willie recorded too, one there?
That's correct, yes.
And Emmylou too?
Yeah, Emmylou, that's right. And then the soundtrack for Sling Blade. It was a great shop. Amazing.
And so you were in New Orleans for how long?
Too long. 15 years.
Oh, but that was where you drew a lot of creativity from that place. And there, so you come to Oxnard, and was it the theater that drew you in, or I mean, there's nothing great about Oxnard.
Yeah, I was just driving on the PCH with a friend, listening to records, and I saw this cinema that was for lease. I thought, oh, that looks pretty good. And it's obviously an old place, been closed down for a while, and we looked up the owner and said, that's it. We rented that place. I was there for about 5 years. But prior to that, Bob had read me all the lyrics to Time Out of Mind in a hotel room in New York. And I didn't hear a note. He just read the lyrics.
Uh-huh.
He said, what do you think, Daniel? Have we got a record? I said, yeah, we got a record. But he said, there's records I want you to listen to. And he gave me a bunch of old blues records to listen to. Some of them I was already familiar with.
Like what?
Oh, some Little Walter and Charlie Patton.
Oh, all the way back.
Old records that he was very fond of, in the way that they had a sound of urgency in them.
Ah.
And there was not a bunch of studio trickery. And I listened to these records, and I went to a friend of mine's place, a fellow by the name of Tony Mangurian in New York, and he's a drummer, and I play a bit of percussion and drums myself. We overdubbed on top of these records, just played along with them.
Huh.
And then we took the records away and just listened to our toppings, and the toppings had similar grooves, so things like... We chose the best 8 bars here, 16 bars there, 4 bars, and we made loops. Because I knew that Bob was about to make a blues-based record, and I didn't want to be... the problem with making a blues-based record is you might sound like a bar band. And a lot of things had already been done with the blues, so
tricky
I wanted
with
to have
blues, right? Tricky. Anyone can play it.
Well, it's you could hit the tar pit pretty quick playing the blues if you don't get it right.
Oh yeah.
So I came in with these prepared loops when we did Time Out of Mind as an insurance policy that if things got a little too regular, a little too normal, I could pull out the loops and ask the drummers to play along with the loops. So Time Out of Mind has loops in it that Keltner and Brian Blade played along with.
Huh. It just felt to me like the shift in his was not so much a reinvention, but it was sort of some kind of weird, profound acknowledgement of his mortality to me.
I felt that when he read the lyrics. I felt that there was a deep melancholy and almost sadness and maybe even regret in there. It was just so it was dripping in history.
Yeah,
his own history, and I thought, wow, this could be really something, It
was a great record. It's so interesting you say that about the blues because I like to play blues myself, but you realize that this is a great music, but anyone can do it and anyone can do it okay. So what do you do with it?
It's traditional music at this point, and so we had to, the term I like to, we have